Most people focus entirely on gaining more, but they never ask what they should be leaving behind. We are constantly told to accelerate, to grind, and to outpace the rest. Yet no one mentions the consequence of carrying an invisible mountain on your shoulders. Why does existence feel like a sprint for some and a slow crawl for you? This narrative is essential because the majority of us are hauling heavy anchors we simply don't need. We cling to mental baggage that depletes our spirit, slows our progress, and turns minor hurdles into impossible walls. We convince ourselves that this suffering signifies dedication or grit. But what if true power lies in the art of letting go? Real strength is the courage to put the heavy burden down. Consider the account of a young laborer named Elias, who worked the vast orchards on the edge of a quiet valley. Every daybreak, he trekked 3 miles to reach the trees he cared for. Every twilight, he made that same long journey back to his small cabin. Elias was robust and took immense satisfaction in his physical capability. However, a subtle shift began to occur. The commute that once felt effortless now left his muscles screaming and his spirit fractured. His pace slowed, and soon other harvesters began gliding past him with ease. While Elias gasped for air, others arrived earlier and left with more energy to spare. To compensate, he started his day even earlier. He pushed his body to the breaking point in the sun-drenched fields. Yet he continued to slip further behind. His internal frustration boiled over as he watched teenagers and elderly workers alike accomplish double his output with half the visible strain. One evening, a seasoned mentor named Silas pulled up beside Elias on the dusty path home. "You look like you're carrying the world," Silas remarked. Elias sighed heavily. "I don't understand it. My strength is failing me. Everything feels twice as heavy as it did last year." Silas observed him in silence for a moment, then gestured toward the thick, wool-lined cloak Elias wore. "That is quite a garment for a summer evening," Silas noted. Elias looked at his own reflection in a puddle. He was wearing a heavy winter parka, the same one he had donned during the freezing months. He had simply forgotten to take it off when the seasons changed. "I didn't even perceive it," Elias admitted. "It's been part of me for so long that I stopped feeling the weight." Silas looked him in the eye and asked, "What else are you lugging around that you've simply grown accustomed to?" That question haunted Elias throughout the night. The following dawn, he left the parka on a hook by the door. The walk felt miraculously lighter, but the mentor's words continued to echo. What other invisible weights was he hauling? He began to audit his inner world. At the orchard, he realized he spent the first 2 hours of every shift obsessing over errors he made weeks ago. He relived every mistake, fueling a fire of self-criticism and fearing the judgment of his peers. This mental loop produced 0 results. It only drained his battery before the actual work commenced. He was dragging the ghost of his past into the reality of his present. Elias spotted another leak. Whenever a colleague offered a tip, he felt an immediate surge of defensiveness. He wasted precious breath explaining why his methods were superior or why his specific situation was uniquely difficult. Even when the guidance was brilliant, he rejected it. He was prioritizing his ego over his evolution. He saw even more. Every minor inconvenience felt like a targeted conspiracy. A broken tool felt like a personal betrayal by the universe. The success of a neighbor felt like a direct indictment of his own worth. He was hoarding bitterness that had no objective value. Elias decided to launch a personal trial. Each morning, he would identify one specific mental weight and consciously decide to leave it at the gate. On the first day, he targeted his past blunders. When a memory of failure surfaced, he acknowledged it once and then redirected his focus to the task at hand. The nagging internal critic began to lose its voice. On the second day, he surrendered his need to be right. When a peer suggested a new pruning technique, Elias simply smiled, said thank you, and applied the lesson. Regardless of whether the advice worked, he saved the massive energy he used to spend guarding his pride. On the third day, he surrendered his anger toward the weather. When a storm rolled in, he didn't curse the sky. He simply moved his work to the shed. The hours flew by. As the weeks passed, Elias felt a profound sense of buoyancy. The hills hadn't flattened, and the hours hadn't shrunk, but his internal landscape had shifted. Silas eventually pulled him aside. "You move with a different rhythm now," he said. "I am simply traveling light," Elias replied. "Most individuals never grasp this," Silas explained. "They collect grievances like stones. A grudge here, a regret there, a narrative about how the world owes them something. They stack these stones until they are paralyzed. Then they blame the path for being too steep." Elias finally saw it clearly. He had been a collector of stones. He looked around and saw his community dragging invisible sleds, convinced that being exhausted was just the price of being alive. We don't realize that heaviness is often a choice, not a destiny. "Why is this so hard to see?" Elias asked. "Because the weight accumulates in grams, not kilograms," Silas replied. "You don't wake up under a boulder. You add a tiny pebble every week. By the time the pressure is suffocating, you've forgotten what it feels like to breathe freely. You assume the struggle is the standard." Elias thought of his family. His brother was still angry about a slight from a decade ago. His best friend refused to apply for a promotion because of a rejection from 5 years prior. They were all suffocating under the weight of things that no longer existed. Elias began sharing his revelation. He didn't preach or demand change. He simply told his own story. He spoke about the parka and the pebbles. He described how he had once been the slowest man on the path and how he found his speed again by dropping what didn't matter. Some mocked him, but others began to look at their own shoulders. They started their own trials. They experienced their own liberation. Here is the truth we often miss. Fatigue isn't always about your workload. We blame our bosses, our bank accounts, or our busy calendars. We say our plates are full. But the real exhaustion stems from the how, not the what. You can handle immense challenges with clarity and poise if you aren't also dragging the corpse of yesterday's shame or the phantom of tomorrow's anxiety. Consider your own journey. What are you holding that serves no purpose? What resentment is rotting in your pocket? A single unresolved conflict might be costing you 30% of your daily focus. A mistake from your youth might be the anchor keeping you from your future. The strategy is simple. Every sunrise, name one unnecessary burden. Then, give yourself permission to set it down for the next 12 hours. If your mind tries to reclaim it, notice the movement and gently place it back on the ground. This isn't about ignoring reality. It's about distinguishing between a tool and a weight. A tool helps you build. A weight only makes you tired. You can tell them apart by the way they sit in your chest. Try this for 7 days. Witness the surge in your natural energy. Most people will never attempt this. They will die carrying the same stones they picked up in childhood. They will look at your likeness and call it luck. But you will know it was a series of choices. You cannot control the wind, but you can control what you carry. If this message resonated with your spirit, share it with someone who looks weary. Don't offer a lecture. Just offer the story. Let them realize they have a hand on the handle of their own burden. Sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply stop carrying what is already gone. To join a community dedicated to mental clarity and intentional living, like this video and subscribe to Daily Tale Dose. Turn on the bell to ensure you never miss a lesson. Tell us in the comments, what is the one stone you are dropping today? Your courage might be the signal someone else needs to finally let go.